I am Dr. Valencia Perry, and I am an academic professor, and I'm also a speech language pathologist. And I teach university classes in speech language pathology primarily at the graduate level. And when I say graduate, I mean at the master's level and at the research doctoral level. However, I also teach undergrad courses like anatomy. So this semester, I was overloaded with a lot of classes, more than I typically teach, and I really needed to utilize resources to make teaching easy. So what did I do? I turned to my best friend, ChatGPT. And there's a newer version out right now called GPT-40, which is more like they're beta testing it. I don't know if it's available in every version. I don't know if it's available in the free version, but this one, I mean, for the cost that ChatGPT, which is one of the more economical AI generative language processing or generative programs, I think that this is a great deal and is very useful for instructors. And so I wanted to today show you the process that I went through to create a rubric for one of my case study projects for my course. This course requires students to analyze literacy skills of a patient with a communication disorder. So they're doing a reading assessment, and then they're using a qualitative reading, specifically the qualitative reading inventory to analyze a reading ability. And they're talking about the patient's performance relative to areas of language that they could informally assess while embedded into this reading inventory. All of that is, here or there. It doesn't matter the subject. What's important is the way you can use GPT to make teaching easy. So that's what I want to talk about because it has saved my life. So in the past, I would need to create a rubric, and rubrics sometimes can take me a long time to create because I'm trying to make the rubric, relevant for the class that I'm teaching or the assignment in the class. And I love rubrics. I studied writing. I have publications on writing and student writing, and so I understand the importance of being able to point back to elements in the project to be able to explain to students where they maybe did things correctly and where they did things incorrectly to enhance student learning. So rubrics are a great way to objectify your grading. And when you're teaching a lot of classes, you really need to have objective grading data because students, and you're inevitably going to make mistakes and they're going to challenge your grade. And so you want to be able to point back to something that you used to grade rather than arbitrarily throwing a grade out there and then trying to remember why you took deducted points or, whatever the case may be, in terms of why you assign the grade that you assign for an assignment. So let's get into my GPT and how it, my relationship with it and how I have learned to work with it. So I just think this is really helpful, and excuse my tabs, but this is really what I'm working from right now. So the first thing that I did is, and actually I'm going to share my screen with my conversation with the GPT. And again, this GPT is my bestie. I hate to say that my best friend is a robot, but here we are. Okay, so I asked it, hey, I'm using the qualitative inventory for case study project. I described the project to the GPT the way that I provided it to the students. I told them, okay, we're going to have groups. You're going to indicate your group members, da, 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 da. You're going to, score the word list, which is a section in the assessment. Then you're going to score at least one passage. You're going to include at least three elements: a reading accuracy score, a retelling score, and a comprehension question score. Then you need to score each of those, and I want to see your score sheet. You need to calculate the client's reading rate. You need to determine the client's reading level based on their performance on the word list and the passages. And then you need to write a 1 to 2 page written report of the client's reading ability so that you can share that with an IEP team, which is the individual education plan team for students in special education, or a care planning team, because we also had some medical patients with traumatic brain injury in this case study assignment. Okay, so I just put the description in the GPT and it said, okay, here's a rubric for assessing it. So it gave me the rubric and I was like, oh, wow, this is nice. So then I said, well, I can't use this right now. I said, this rubric, this is what it said about the rubric. And I said, can you convert the percentages to points? The assignment is worth 100 points. So it went back and it did that. Okay, so then I said, all right, well, thank you. Can you give me a PDF version of this chart with a blue header row? Because, my university blue is one of our colors. So I was just like, with a blue row. So this is the first version that it gave me. A hot mess. A hot mess. Okay, so that's the first version. So I was like, Chad, like, what are you doing? I cannot read. Oh, you can't. Can you see this? So this is the version that it gave me, right? A hot mess. So then I said, okay, well, I can't read that. So I went back, to it and I said, I know I can't read the file at all. And so it said there may have been some issues with formatting the layout. So it said it improved the rubric and then it gave me another rubric. So this is the second rubric that it gave me. So as you can see, this rubric still is not easy to read. So I went back to it and I want you to just see what I'm saying to it so you can understand how to get what you want out of this. Like, don't just stop because it doesn't work for you the first, the second, the third, the fourth, and you'll see how many times I've gone through this. I said, nope, it still doesn't look like the table I meant to say provided me with. So excuse my grammar in this system. I do like the title and color, but the formatting doesn't look like a grading rubric. The lines don't go past the first column horizontally. So I'm trying to explain to it what it did wrong so that it can learn what it did wrong and give me another version. And that's exactly what it did. So after this version, this is the next version that it gave me. Still a mess, right? So I went back to it and I said, it still looks the same. I can't read anything past the first column. And there's even overlapping text in that column, just not as much as the other columns. So then it gives me this version. So it's looking better, but there's still a lot of overlapping text. So I told it that, okay, you got to let it know what it's doing good. You got to let it know what it's doing bad so that it can keep a record. So I said, this is much better, right? Now, the only problem is that the text and the columns are running off the page on the right side of the PDF. Can you keep everything within the standard margins for the standard letter size paper so that I can easily print this document? Okay, so it said, thank you for pointing that out. I'll adjust the columns. I'll make it in a standard letter size. So I went back and this is the next version. So I think it gave me this, and then this was the next version. So this is when I was saying, wow, this is looking even better. So again, I had to, as you can see, it's starting to look more and more like a usable rubric, but I have to talk to it to get it there. So I said, getting better. However, the points column is running off the page and it's outside of the margin. So it then gave me that next version. And then I said, however, that column is still running off the side of the margin again. So now let's go back to the next version. Okay, so here's the next version. So as you can see, I'm still going back and forth. So now I'm like, this is where I'm saying the points column is running off the margin. So then it gives me this version. And I'm loving this version, except I don't see a total column. You see how things are kind of on several pages. So that's not useful for me. I would like everything on one page to make it easier for me to score each student. I have to score multiple student projects. Even though they're group projects, there's still a few that I have to score. So I said, is there any way you can fit everything on one page while continuing to stay within print margins? So it's thinking and it's typing and letting me know what it's going to do so that it stays on one page. And then it does that, and I'm going to show you that one. But then I also come back and say, now, can you reduce one of the comment lines so that it all fits on one page? So let's go. And then the last version is, you did it. You're an intelligent GPT better than any assistant. So it's like, I'm thrilled to do it right for you. Let me know if you need any help, right? It's always just so pleasant and so kind. That's why I said this GPT really is my best friend. So here we are. We've got the points columns looking good within the margins. It's on one page, but then there's no total. So I asked it to give me a total. So it does that, but it doesn't fit it on one page. So then finally it gives me everything on one page, but the comments are going into a second page. So I said, well, just reduce one of them. I'll just have 2 comment lines. And then it does it. So it finally gives me, oh no, you're not seeing this. Let me go back and share. I'm sharing the wrong thing. Okay. Yeah. So I was saying I was here. Everything was on multiple pages. So I asked it to go to one page, but then I asked it did that. But once I asked it for totals and columns, it started to go down to 2 pages. So again, I said, just reduce one of the comment lines, and it did that. And that's how it was able to fit everything onto one page while also keeping the font no less than 8-point font because I wanted it to be readable for me. So now I have a wonderful rubric that totals up to 100 points, gives me, examples of, excellent, proficient, developing, and then, needs improvement categories or criteria, well, categories or ratings for the criteria. And then it gives me space to write comments. And then I can also write below the lines. So I still have sufficient space to make any comments that I need for the group projects. So ultimately, I did this probably in maybe 10 minutes time, maybe 15 minutes. I'm not sure, but it was relatively quick. And I don't think I could have created such a good rubric on a PDF like this in that amount of time. Typically, it would take me, maybe like an hour, I want to say. If not an hour, it would take me some, significant time to think through the rubric and to make it, because recall, I didn't have a rubric that I started from. I started from the project description. And so GPT created the rubric for me based on the project description. Now, of course, I did need to read through the criteria and make sure that it was something that I was comfortable with as a given category, and that the assignment of the points was correct, or, the weighting of each category was appropriate. And I think that it is. And then so you do need to read it, and you do need to give it feedback. A lot of people that I work with and that I know who are against AI typically will say, it sounds like it's a computer. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. And I would argue, yes, it does. But there are many ways that you can use it as a helpful tool. If I were to work with my teaching assistant, no shade to my teaching assistants, but if I were to ask a teaching assistant for a rubric, this would have taken them forever to do. And I still would have had to go back and forth with them, just like I did with GPT. So why not just make the rubric in GPT and now give it to my assistant? And I can ensure that my assistant has some objective measure against which to grade group projects. So now grading is more cohesive and more consistent and more reliable. And that's really what we're aiming for, especially when we're trying to balance so many courses in a semester. So this can be applied to, so many other things. It doesn't necessarily have to be a rubric, but I just want to show here how ChatGPT is wonderful for creating rubrics based off of just basic assignment descriptions, or basic descriptions of what you want it to measure. And if you give it the opportunity to learn from you by telling it where it's going right and where it's going wrong, it can work wonders for you. And I think it's really well worth it. So, happy teaching or whatever it is that you're doing. And I hope that you're enjoying using AI. Bye.